Welcome and thank you for joining me for Coffee with Bridget. And today's coffee is Andy's mint chocolate flavored coffee. And I am drinking from my Your Magical mug. And this is a difficult video to make. I admit I've made this video before. I went to upload it and it was just too raw and too vulnerable for me to upload. So I had to make it again. And I actually resorted to typing out kind of the outline of what I wanted to say. And so that is what you are getting here instead of the unfiltered content. And I kind of apologize for that because it was good. And I just couldn't bring myself to upload it. And it is late. The girls are asleep. I'm staying up late for you because this is how I fill my cup. I love making these videos. And I need to do things that make me happy right now. So basically, I knew this week would be difficult. I pulled the oracle cards and I saw the cursed card and I went, uh-oh. And I did feel cursed for a couple of days. I really did. It was a mindset that I had more in my 20s and I slipped back into it for a couple of days and it was difficult. So basically what happened is on Tuesday, which is when I pulled the Five of Cups, which is a card for grief, which is interesting. I talked to my attorney and I discovered that it's very unlikely that we are going to have the divorce settled by June 1st. I thought that we would be able to come to agreement and have things settled outside of court, and that is not happening. So that was a tough day for me. My mind was wrestling with worst case scenarios, planning for the worst. I made quite a few big decisions on the phone with my attorney and afterwards, some big realizations. And I realized in the course of making the video that was very raw and vulnerable that I had a part of my identity that I was grieving. And that part is the stay-at-home mom. Now, I had always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom since I was a little girl. Having a family, having kids was huge to me. That was a single factor and driving force in my life for decades. You know, being a mom is my everything. My kids are my world. I love them to bits and pieces. Like, I can't even express how lucky I am to have kids, how driven I had to be to have kids. I've shared my story about how I persevered and, had my kids. It was a fight. It was a battle. And, the idea of not being the stay-at-home mom, not being the one that takes care of them on a day-to-day basis, that's been hard to let go of, to process. Not being a stay-at-home mom was a big part of my identity. So I mourned that this week. I grieved it. I went through the process of letting that idea go. And, that's something that was very hard to do. It was a hard process. It was very difficult for me to let go of that idea and that part of my identity. And so in a lot of ways, a part of me died this week. A part of me, my hopes and my dreams passed away. And that sounds very dramatic, but that's how much being a stay-at-home mom meant to me. It made me question everything, question myself, question the path forward, question what I was doing. I felt very lost and very hopeless for 2 days. But I have a plan in place. I have an idea of how to go forward. I am full of determination. I bounced back. I know the self-care routines that bring me back to center. I had a panic attack on Tuesday, and I grounded myself. I rubbed my feet, put eucalyptus in the diffuser, went to my altar, lit a candle and some incense, and prayed to the ancestors, which is exactly the advice that the oracle card said was, pray to the ancestors, listen to the wise ones. I didn't put anybody on. I didn't listen to any of the wise ones, but I recalled lessons that I've learned. And yeah, it was difficult. It was deep, deep shadow work. Some of the deepest shadow work that I've ever done. And, grieving a fragment of identity was hard. But I know that did not define me. I know that nothing really defines me. I am who I am. And, yeah, so I'm looking to the next phase of my life with a different approach than what I spiraled and was spiraling about. I'm looking forward to it. It's an era where I get to prove myself. I've been dependent on my husband and I'm dependent on my parents, and I've never really done things on my own. So rather than looking at myself as a victim, rather than seeing myself as less than, I'm just like, well, I want to be a badass mom now. That's the next phase I'm going into. That is what I've decided. The fact that I could bounce back like I did is a testament to my healing journey, my spiritual journey. It was huge. It's a huge thing to bounce back from something that was so bleak and so dark. I really went down some very dark paths, some very bleak paths in my mind, but I went through the denial, and then I went through the acceptance. And now I've made peace with it. So it was a whole process, and it was very tough, and I kept it together. I still took the youngest to her open house. It was difficult, but she had fun, and her older sister had fun. They got to play on the playground. Like, my oldest has always wanted to play on that playground, so they got to play on the playground, which was really fun, and I got pictures and everything. And yeah, I kept it together, but I was falling apart there for a couple days. I was falling apart inside. And it wasn't until I made the video that I deleted that I realized I was mourning. I was mourning the fact that I was a stay-at-home mom and that I was losing that. And that was deeply emotional. And the realization of letting myself feel that, yeah, it wasn't pretty, but I'm very proud of myself for bouncing back. And I want to thank all of you for being here, because one of the ways I bounced back and I kept going through everything was by creating content. It really gave me an outlet. It gave me just something to focus on. It gave me grounding. So thank you for being part of that journey. So shadow work is tough. It can really suck. It can really suck. And it really did suck. But going forward, I'm optimistic. Things are going to change on big levels. I'm going to have to reduce things. There's a lot of stuff that I'm going to have to let go of. But I think the hardest part is behind me, which was the acceptance phase of what could possibly happen. You always plan for the worst, but hope for the best. But yeah, the reality is I have, CPTSD, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So panic attacks are a possibility. And I beat myself up a little bit about the panic attack, but I bounced back, and that's what matters. And I'm optimistic again, and my usual self. I just had 2 days where I was just not myself. It was just not who I usually am. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was hard to make. I made it through. Take care, and bye for now.